What happens when one of the world's most respected athletes finally breaks her silence, and the first words out of her mouth are essentially, "We're done"? What do you do when someone known for grace, discipline, loyalty, and near superhuman emotional control publicly distances herself from someone she once called a close friend? And what does it say when that person is Serena Williams, a woman who rarely speaks impulsively, never chooses conflict unnecessarily, and has survived pressure and scrutiny that would destroy most people? Those are the questions that sparked a global shockwave the moment Serena quietly, deliberately, and unmistakably made it clear that she no longer wants anything to do with Meghan Markle. And the reason she gave, one chilling word, ignited an even bigger storm: manipulative. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. If you felt your stomach drop at that word, you're not alone. Because the truth is, Serena has stayed silent about Meghan for years. She never defended, she never attacked, she simply stayed out of the chaos. And for the longest time, people assumed that silence meant support. But they were wrong. Serena's silence wasn't loyalty. It was distance. It was caution. It was self-protection. And now that she's finally ready to speak, people are realizing that the situation between her and Meghan was far more complicated, far more strained, and far more unsettling than anyone on the outside ever realized. Because Serena didn't just say the friendship is over. She didn't just walk away. According to people close to her, she made a private vow: never again. No more conversations. No more interactions. No more chances. The door is closed. But why? What happened behind the scenes to make Serena cut ties so completely? What pushed her to the point where she now describes Meghan's recent behavior with words as heavy as dangerous? And why now? Why break the silence at this particular moment, after years of keeping her distance and refusing to be dragged into the drama? Those questions are exactly why you're here. Because the story you're about to hear isn't the surface-level gossip people think it is. It's deeper, more complicated, more emotional. It's the kind of story that makes you question how well you really know the people you admire. It's a story about friendship and betrayal, about trust and manipulation, about two women who rose to global fame, but in completely different ways, and how those differences slowly, quietly tore their relationship apart. Think about this. Serena Williams could have spoken out at any time over the past few years. She could have addressed the rumors. She could have clarified or defended or distanced herself publicly. Yet she didn't. She stayed silent when Meghan married into the royal family. She stayed silent during the Oprah interview. She stayed silent during the Netflix documentary. She stayed silent when Meghan's other celebrity friendships collapsed one by one. She stayed silent while Meghan became one of the most controversial public figures on the planet. Silence. 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 But silence is not the same as support. And all along, behind that silence, something else was happening. Something that Serena never revealed until now. A slow shift. A quiet pulling away. A widening emotional gap that Meghan either didn't notice or didn't want to acknowledge. And here's the twist that most people never saw coming. Serena didn't distance herself because she disliked Meghan. She distanced herself because she saw a pattern she'd seen before in other people, a pattern she recognized instantly, a pattern she refused to let into her life, her brand, or her peace. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had a friend who made you feel like you were being pulled into their storm? Someone who always seemed to have drama swirling around them, yet somehow always managed to make you responsible for fixing it? Someone who never asked how you were doing unless it benefited them? Someone who treated your success like their accessory? Someone who praised you publicly but chipped away at you privately? If you have, then you already understand the feeling Serena reportedly had around Meghan. In the beginning, their friendship looked real, genuine, supportive. Serena showed up for Meghan's wedding. Meghan wrote glowing messages about Serena on her blog. They appeared to share admiration, ambition, and mutual respect. But that was only on the surface. Underneath, things were shifting. And the more Meghan's fame grew, the more pressure she placed on certain friendships, including Serena's. The dynamic changed. The energy shifted. According to people close to Serena, Meghan began relying on her in ways that made Serena uncomfortable. Not because Serena didn't want to support her friend, but because the support Meghan expected wasn't emotional. It was strategic. See, Here's the thing about Serena Williams. She earned everything she has through sweat, discipline, sacrifice, and decades of grueling work. She's respected because she built a legacy from scratch. She didn't marry into her fame, she fought for it. She didn't beg for influence, she created it. And because of that history, Serena can sense when someone is trying to use her name, her reputation, or her legacy for their own benefit. She's seen it. She's lived it. She knows the signs. She can recognize emotional manipulation instantly. And when she sees it, even from someone she cares about, she pulls away. The more Meghan gravitated toward the spotlight, the more Serena distanced herself. And at first, people assumed Serena was just busy, or private, or uninterested in drama. But what if the truth is much darker than that? What if Serena wasn't avoiding the drama? What if she was avoiding Meghan? What if she saw something everyone else missed? This is where the emotional stakes begin to rise. Because as Meghan's behavior became more unpredictable and more polarizing, Serena started to see things differently. She began to reassess their friendship. She began to pick up on contradictions, inconsistencies, stories that didn't add up, actions that didn't match words, promises that carried strings, requests that were more like demands. And it wasn't one single moment. It was a series of them, a slow drip of red flags, a pattern of behavior that built over time, a growing sense that Meghan wasn't just looking for friendship, she was looking for leverage. And Serena, someone who has built her entire life on authenticity and integrity, was not about to let herself be pulled into something that felt disingenuous. But here's where things get even more intense. Serena didn't react. Not publicly, not dramatically, not emotionally. She didn't confront Meghan with cameras rolling. She didn't make bold statements. She simply stepped back, quietly, calmly, intentionally. She protected her peace. She protected her family. She protected her legacy. But Meghan noticed. And according to insiders familiar with the situation, Meghan did not take that step back well. In fact, her reaction is one of the major reasons Serena now describes her as manipulative. Because instead of respecting Serena's boundary, Meghan reportedly tried to pull her back in, with requests, emotional appeals, and behavior that felt increasingly desperate. And then something happened. Something big. Something that Serena has never fully discussed publicly, but something that insiders say was the final push. The moment Serena decided the friendship wasn't just strained, it was over. A single moment where Meghan said or did something that didn't just raise red flags. It triggered an emotional alarm. Think about that. Serena Williams, the calmest, strongest, most composed woman you can imagine, felt compelled to walk away completely. To say, "We're done." To shut the door on a friendship she once valued. That doesn't happen easily. That doesn't happen without reason. That doesn't happen unless something truly crossed a line. And that's why people are paying attention now. Because Serena doesn't use words like manipulative or dangerous lightly. She doesn't speak in hyperbole. She doesn't stir drama. She doesn't exaggerate. So if she's saying these things now, it means the situation behind the scenes was far more serious than anyone knew. But there's another layer of tension here, and it's one that fuels the mystery even more. Serena is not the first celebrity to quietly distance herself from Meghan, nor is she the first one to eventually speak out about why. But she is the most shocking one, the most unexpected one, the one whose silence spoke volumes. Which means that if she's finally talking, then something significant must have happened. And that brings us to why you're here. Because to understand Serena's final statement, you must understand everything that led up to it. The subtle shifts in their friendship, the private conversations, the uncomfortable requests, the emotional manipulation, the pressure, the contradictions. The moment Serena finally realized she had to walk away for good. Because what came next, what Meghan did after Serena distanced herself, is what ultimately pushed Serena to say the words she never thought she'd have to say. And that part of the story, the part Serena has tried to keep quiet until now, that's where everything changes. And no one saw it coming. What if the moment everything changed wasn't loud, dramatic, or public, but almost unsettlingly quiet? What if the true beginning of the end wasn't an argument, a confrontation, or a falling out, but a silence so sharp and unexpected it made the people around Serena Williams stop and whisper to each other, "What just happened?" Because that's how it started. Not with fireworks, but with a pause. A pause long enough, heavy enough, meaningful enough to reveal that something between Serena and Meghan Markle had shifted. And the strangest part? Serena didn't announce it. She didn't complain. She didn't make a scene. She simply stopped speaking. To Meghan. About Meghan. Around Meghan. And if you know Serena, the woman who built her entire legacy on power, precision, and presence, you know silence is not her default. Silence is her strategy. Here's the question you should be asking yourself. What would make someone like Serena, who has survived decades of media storms, controversies, criticism, and unimaginable pressure, choose silence over engagement? What would make a woman known for her strength decide that the safest, smartest, most self-preserving choice was to say absolutely nothing? Because silence is not empty. Silence is full of meaning. Silence is a message. Silence is a boundary. And in Serena's case, it was the first sign that Meghan had stepped into territory Serena wasn't willing to tolerate. Let's rewind. Imagine Serena at the height of her global influence, fresh off major tournaments, appearing at events, building her business empire, raising her child, redefining motherhood and athleticism at the same time. She was busy, yes, but she was also intentional. She chose who she surrounded herself with. She wasn't careless about friendships or alliances. So when Meghan Markle entered her orbit years earlier, the connection seemed natural. Both ambitious, both rising, both driven. And when Meghan became a global figure after marrying Prince Harry, people assumed Serena would be part of that story. They expected her to speak out in support, to be vocal, to be visible, to be present. But then something unexpected happened. Serena disappeared from the narrative. Quietly. No interviews about Meghan. No enthusiastic public defense. No lengthy Instagram tributes. No appearances together outside a few controlled events. Just distance. A quiet, deliberate distance that people dismissed as scheduling conflicts or privacy, until now. Because now we know the truth. That silence was not incidental. It was intentional. But what triggered it? What was the moment that made Serena step back? Insiders say it wasn't one big blowout, but the accumulation of strained conversations, strange requests, and emotional pressure that climaxed in one very specific moment. A moment so uncomfortable that even Serena's closest confidants noticed her energy change instantly. Picture this. Serena receives a message from Meghan. Not unusual. They had kept in touch, shared updates, exchanged encouragement. But this message was different. The tone was different. The urgency was different. Meghan wasn't reaching out as a friend. She was reaching out with an agenda. Suddenly, Serena felt it. The shift, the pull, the sense that Meghan wasn't asking because she cared about Serena's perspective. She was asking because she needed something. Something big. Something strategic. Something Serena instinctively knew she couldn't give without compromising her own peace. And in that moment, Serena didn't respond the way most people would expect. She didn't argue. She didn't push back. She didn't ask questions. She simply paused. She set her phone down, walked away, and said nothing. Have you ever had a moment like that? A moment where you realize a friendship is no longer balanced. When someone you once trusted starts treating you like a chess piece instead of a person. When their presence in your life begins to feel like a liability instead of a blessing. That's the moment Serena found herself in. And instead of trying to fix something that was already broken, she chose silence. But here's the twist. That silence wasn't just a reaction. It was a test. Serena wanted to see how Meghan would react if she was no longer immediately available. If she no longer responded at once. If she no longer fed into the constant flow of emotional intensity Meghan was pushing onto her. And Meghan's reaction? It apparently confirmed everything Serena feared. According to people who witnessed the shift, Meghan became increasingly persistent. Messages, calls, invitations, subtle guilt-tripping, emotional appeals that felt more like pressure than concern. The energy around Meghan shifted from friendly to insistent, from casual to strategic, from warm to self-serving. And Serena, who has spent her entire life reading opponents, sensing energy, detecting motives, saw right through it. But the real turning point wasn't Meghan's persistence. It was how Meghan reacted when Serena finally pulled back completely. Because this is the part almost no one knows. Meghan didn't respond with empathy. She didn't ask if Serena was okay. She didn't check in or give space. Instead, she pushed harder. She reached out through mutual contacts. She tried to create opportunities that required Serena's participation. She attempted to lock Serena into public alignment through PR, through appearances, through messaging. And that, according to insiders familiar with the situation, is when Serena felt the alarm bells. Because it became clear that Meghan wasn't treating her as a friend. She was treating her as leverage. This is the emotional twist that changes everything. Because imagine being Serena, someone who has built her name on authenticity, integrity, and independence, and suddenly feeling like you're being used. Suddenly sensing that your presence is more valuable to someone than your well-being. Suddenly realizing that someone you once trusted sees you not as a person, but as a resource. It's a painful realization. It's a cold one. It's a betrayal without the explosion, a fracture without the fight. And the saddest part? Meghan still didn't seem to understand what was happening. She didn't see the silence as a boundary. She saw it as resistance. Something to overcome. Something to push through. Something to work around. And that made Serena's discomfort even stronger. So the silence grew. Longer pauses before replies. Short answers. Missed events. Canceled plans. Until eventually there was nothing. A complete emotional disconnect. But just when Serena thought the quiet distance would resolve the situation, something else happened. Something that pushed the silence from caution into finality. A moment that took place at a private event, where Meghan said or did something so surprising, so strategic, so bold, that Serena realized the friendship wasn't just unbalanced, it was unsafe. It was something she could no longer emotionally or reputationally afford. We're going to get into that moment. We're going to break down exactly what happened, how it unfolded, who saw it, what Serena felt, why it shocked her so deeply, and why it became the true beginning of the end. But before we do, you need to understand the emotional weight of what comes next. Because up until this point, the story is about discomfort, awareness, a shift in energy. But the moment you're about to hear, this is where everything pivots. This is the moment that didn't just make Serena go silent. It made her pull away for good. And what Meghan did next, that's when the story turns from uncomfortable to manipulative. And no one, absolutely no one, saw it coming. Have you ever had someone ask you for something that made the room feel colder? Something so unexpected, so bold, so out of line that you needed a moment to process whether they were serious or whether you'd misheard them completely. That's the kind of moment Serena Williams found herself in when Meghan Markle made the request that would later become one of the biggest turning points in their friendship. A moment that hit Serena like a slap she never saw coming. Because this wasn't just a casual ask. It wasn't a favor between friends. It wasn't even an emotional appeal. This was calculated, strategic, and, according to insiders close to Serena, it was so wildly inappropriate that Serena didn't know whether to laugh, confront, or walk away. But let's rewind for context. The silence between Serena and Meghan didn't happen overnight. It was building slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. The tension wasn't verbal, it was atmospheric. It was in the tone of Meghan's calls, the urgency of her texts, the way she framed her situations. Meghan didn't ask for things in a normal way. She wrapped everything in emotional language. She dressed it in personal crisis. She presented it as if saying no would equal betrayal. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who never asks directly, but somehow makes you feel obligated anyway? That was the pattern forming. And Serena, despite her loyalty, despite her empathy, was starting to feel cornered. Then came the request. A private call from Meghan, delivered in a voice too sweet, too dramatic, too rehearsed for Serena to miss the undertone. Meghan started with softness, compliments, warmth, nostalgic references to their early friendship. Serena recognized the technique immediately. She's seen it in business negotiations, in brand meetings, in acquaintances who wanted something from her. Flattery before the blow. Softness before the ask. Emotional padding before manipulation. And as Meghan spoke, Serena braced herself. Because she could feel it coming. Something was off. Something was being prepared. And then Meghan said it. A request so heavy-handed, so self-serving, so astonishing that Serena reportedly froze. Here's the thing. I won't spell out the exact phrase in this chapter. You'll get the full detail later. But think about what someone would have to ask to make one of the most disciplined, emotionally grounded women on earth go silent. Imagine how deep the entitlement must have been. Imagine how personal it must have felt. Imagine the shock of realizing the friend sitting on the other end of the phone didn't see you as a human being with boundaries, but as a tool to be used. A resource, a shortcut. That's what Meghan asked for. Serena listened, not interrupting, not responding, just listening. And what she heard made her pulse slow and her mind sharpen, because she realized, in that moment, that Meghan didn't understand her, didn't respect her, didn't see her. Meghan saw the Serena Williams brand, the Serena Williams influence, the Serena Williams spotlight, and she wanted to borrow it, control it, attach herself to it, shift her own narrative through it. Let me ask you something directly. Have you ever had a friend who didn't want your advice, just your name? Someone who didn't care about you, just about what being associated with you could do for them? Someone who praised you publicly but drained you privately? Because that's exactly how this moment hit Serena. And the craziest part? Meghan didn't seem to think the request was inappropriate at all. She delivered it with confidence, ease, expectation, as if Serena's agreement was a given, as if Serena's boundaries didn't exist, as if Serena's career and legacy were items she could check out like library books. There was something in Meghan's tone, something presumptuous, that made Serena realize this wasn't a one-time ask. If she said yes now, the door would never close. The request would escalate. The emotional pressure would deepen. The relationship would collapse into a pattern of taking. And Serena? She wasn't about to become anyone's stepping stone. But here's where the emotional nuance comes in. Serena wasn't angry. Not yet. She wasn't offended. Not yet. She was disappointed. And if you've ever disappointed someone who rarely gets disappointed, you know that's far worse than making them angry. Because disappointment means expectations were broken. Trust was misjudged. Character was exposed. And Serena felt all of that in one moment. But she didn't react. Not outwardly. She didn't confront. She didn't lash out. She didn't express hurt. She simply went still. It's the same stillness she has on the court right before she slams the winning serve. The stillness before the strike. Meghan, sensing the shift, tried to soften the request. Tried to add emotional backstory. Tried to say she needed this. That it was important. That Serena was the only one who could help. Have you heard that line before? The line people use when they want something, and they want it badly enough to turn friendship into leverage? But Serena didn't soften. She didn't reassure. She didn't validate. For the first time, Meghan felt the wall go up. And here's the detail that makes the story even more compelling. Serena didn't say no. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. Because silence, in the right context, is more powerful than refusal. Silence strips away excuses. Silence reveals the truth. Silence forces the other person to see the boundary they didn't expect. Meghan panicked. She tried to reframe the request. Tried to make it sound smaller, lighter, less intrusive. She pivoted from emotional appeal to strategic justification, then back to emotional vulnerability. A dance of persuasion Serena recognized immediately. Serena stayed silent. Meghan tried guilt, subtly, softly, the way someone does when they want you to feel responsible for their outcome. But Serena didn't move. She breathed. She observed. She analyzed. Because Serena is not an impulsive person, she's an evaluator. She studies people the same way she studies opponents. And as she listened, she realized something chilling. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't a one-off moment of bad judgment. This was who Meghan had become. Someone who saw people as extensions of her own needs. And that's when Serena made her decision. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Quietly. She decided she would no longer make herself emotionally available to Meghan. She would no longer offer unreciprocated support. She would no longer allow herself to be placed in situations where her name could be used without her consent. Her silence wasn't an accident. It was a boundary cementing itself in real time. And Meghan felt it. You know how some people react when they feel someone slipping away? They cling harder, push harder, ask more. That's what Meghan did. She tried reconnecting through mutual friends, tried offering collaborations, tried floating new ideas that tied their futures together. It wasn't friendship. It was alignment. It was leverage. It was a strategic move disguised as emotional intimacy. Serena saw it instantly, but she still didn't respond. Because in Serena's world, silence is protection. Silence gives clarity. Silence removes confusion. Silence forces the truth to reveal itself. But for Meghan, silence was a threat, a challenge. something to defeat. And that is what turned this quiet moment into something destructive. Because Meghan wasn't going to accept silence as an answer. She interpreted it as rejection. And instead of backing off gracefully, she did something that pushed Serena into the next stage of withdrawal. Something that made Serena question how deep the manipulation actually went. That part of the story, that's where things escalate. That's where Meghan moves from asking for something inappropriate to pushing for something Serena would never tolerate. And that moment, what Meghan did after Serena didn't give her what she wanted. That's what leads us to the next chapter. Because what Meghan tried next crossed a line so sharply, so shockingly, that Serena realized she wasn't dealing with a friend anymore. She was dealing with someone who saw her as an opportunity. And what Meghan did next, it would set the stage for the call that changed everything. What happens when silence fails? When the distance you create for your peace becomes the trigger that makes the other person push harder, dig deeper, and escalate in ways you didn't expect. That's exactly what happened to Serena Williams. Because Meghan Markle didn't accept silence. She didn't interpret it as a boundary. She interpreted it as defiance. And instead of pausing, instead of reflecting, instead of stepping back to understand why Serena might be uncomfortable, Meghan did something else. She called. Not a casual call. Not a "hey, how are you" call. A strategic call. A call Serena immediately recognized as the moment everything would either calm down or break apart. And the second Serena picked up, she knew. The tone told her. The tension told her. The energy told her. Meghan wasn't calling to apologize or clarify. She was calling to fix what she believed had gone wrong. But her version of fixing wasn't soft or empathetic. It was insistent, emotional, heavy. And as the conversation unfolded, Serena realized that this wasn't simply a misunderstanding between friends. This was a pressure point, a pivot, a reveal of the dynamic Meghan was trying to create. Let me ask you something directly. Have you ever answered a call and instantly regretted picking up? That sinking feeling in the gut, that tightening in the chest, that almost psychic awareness that you're about to hear something you don't want to hear? That was the first 10 seconds of this call for Serena. Meghan began fast talking, fast emotion, fast explanations. She sounded flustered, not authentically vulnerable, but theatrically frazzled. The kind of frantic tone someone uses when they're trying to regain control of a situation slipping through their fingers. She launched into how busy she'd been, how misunderstood she felt, how people always twist things, how she hoped Serena understood her heart. But the strangest part? She never explicitly mentioned the inappropriate request she'd made, never apologized, never acknowledged that it crossed a line. Instead, she reframed. She acted confused about Serena's silence. She implied Serena might have misread things. She suggested that people like them, powerful, targeted, misunderstood, had to stick together. And then she did it. She turned the conversation into an emotional mirror, a guilt mirror, a reflection Serena did not recognize and did not accept. Because Meghan started listing moments she had supported Serena, mentions she'd made, encouragements she'd offered, times she'd been there, subtle reminders, not friendship, accounting, a tally. Serena listened, calm, steady. Her silence wasn't passive, it was intentional. She wanted to understand what was really going on beneath the words. And what she heard was unmistakable. Meghan wasn't calling to reconnect emotionally. She was calling to regain access, to secure influence, to reattach herself to Serena's public presence. Have you ever been in a conversation where you realize the other person isn't talking to you? They're talking at you? That they're not listening, just waiting for their turn to steer the narrative? That's what this call felt like. A monologue, a performance, a persuasion attempt masquerading as vulnerability. The more Meghan talked, the clearer the pattern became. She was trying to create emotional urgency. She kept repeating phrases like, "You know how it is, you understand me, we're the same, you get what I mean." She was trying to bond, but not in a healthy way, in a way that made Serena feel trapped. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Unhealthy people don't like it when you set boundaries. They take it personally. They interpret distance as betrayal. And instead of respecting your limits, they push harder. They demand clarity, attention, commitment. And that's exactly what Meghan did. She shifted from emotion to necessity. She pressed Serena on why she had pulled away. She asked for answers. She wanted reassurance that Serena still supported her publicly. Serena heard the word support multiple times, and not once did Meghan use it in a way that sounded like friendship. It sounded like branding, like positioning, like PR. This was the moment Serena finally spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Serena never needs volume to make her point. She speaks with clarity, with control, with intention, and she told Meghan, calmly, clearly, that she needed space. That things felt rushed. That she felt Meghan was asking for things Serena couldn't give. And Meghan's reaction? Instant defensiveness. Instant emotional pivot. Instant pressure. She said she was hurt. She said she felt abandoned. She said she hoped Serena wasn't choosing other people over her. That last line hit Serena differently, because it didn't sound like friendship. It sounded like ownership. And then Meghan made the mistake that sealed the fate of the call. She suggested that Serena's reputation, her legacy, her platform, could help both of them in ways Serena simply wasn't comfortable with. She didn't frame it as collaboration. She framed it as responsibility, almost like Serena owed it to her. That line, insiders say, changed the trajectory of the entire conversation, because Serena realized Meghan hadn't just tested a boundary. She had never believed the boundary existed in the first place. That was the moment Serena emotionally detached. She didn't argue. She didn't justify. She didn't defend herself. She simply stopped participating in the emotional tug-of-war Meghan was trying to create. And that's when Meghan escalated again. She shifted into a softer tone. She tried sympathy. She tried self-pity. She tried to pull at Serena's empathy. But Serena has spent her entire life being trained to control her emotions. She does not get manipulated easily, especially not by guilt. She told Meghan again, simply, that she could not continue the dynamic they had fallen into. And that's when Meghan said it, the line that made Serena internally shut the door forever. She said, "I feel like you're abandoning me at the worst possible time." That sentence told Serena everything she needed to know, because it wasn't about understanding Serena's feelings. It wasn't about asking how Serena was doing. It wasn't about mending the friendship. It was pressure disguised as pain, manipulation disguised as vulnerability, a demand disguised as a confession. And Serena didn't accept it. She stayed calm. She stayed grounded. But she didn't bend. Not this time. Not after everything she had seen building. Not after realizing Meghan saw her silence not as a boundary, but as a personal insult. Serena ended the call gracefully, but firmly. She made it clear she needed space. Real space. Not a pause. A boundary. And Meghan was stunned. Because for the first time, she realized Serena wasn't going to be emotionally controlled. She wasn't going to be guilt. She wasn't going to be used. Serena wasn't playing the game. But here's the part almost no one knows. After the call ended, Meghan didn't walk away. She didn't accept the boundary. She didn't respect the silence. She made moves. Strategic moves. Desperate moves. Moves that Serena found out about days later. And those moves revealed just how far Meghan was willing to go to pull Serena back in. And when Serena learned about those behind-the-scenes attempts, that's when she realized she needed to walk away completely. Because what Meghan did after the call wasn't just manipulative. It was dangerous. And that moment set the stage for the explosive turning point coming next. What kind of person reacts to a boundary by quietly planning a way around it? What kind of friend, instead of accepting the space you asked for, begins strategizing how to pull you back into their orbit, without your consent, without your comfort, and without any regard for what you actually want? Because that's exactly what Meghan Markle did in the days following that tense, revealing phone call. And this is where the story shifts from emotional discomfort into something far more calculated, far more intentional, far more disturbing. Because Meghan didn't just react to Serena's boundary. She created a plan to keep Serena tied to her, a plan to ensure that Serena, whether she realized it or not, remained a part of Meghan's public narrative. A plan that, if successful, would have made it nearly impossible for Serena to fully step back. And the craziest part? Meghan genuinely believed Serena would go along with it. She believed Serena would eventually bend. That she would eventually give in. That she would eventually play the role Meghan had written for her in her mind. But Serena Williams is not someone who plays roles written by other people. She has spent her entire life rewriting the script. She built her legacy by saying no when others expected yes. And when Meghan began crafting her plan, she underestimated one crucial detail. Serena does not move under pressure. She does not bend under emotional weight. And she definitely does not allow herself to be used. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone decide what your relationship with them should look like without asking you? Someone who doesn't accept your boundaries, so they try to create situations that force you to break them? Someone who sees your silence as an obstacle instead of a message. Because that's what Meghan's plan was, a workaround, a strategy, a way to bypass the uncomfortable truth that Serena was stepping away. Here's how insiders say it began. First, Meghan reached out to mutual industry contacts, quietly, subtly, strategically. She hinted she and Serena had big things in the works. She implied partnerships, projects, joint appearances. She planted the idea that something major involving both of them was coming. And these weren't accidental suggestions. They were seeds. Seeds Meghan hoped would grow into expectations Serena would feel pressured to meet. After all, if enough people believed Serena was involved, wouldn't she feel obligated to participate? It's a tactic manipulators sometimes use. Create an expectation publicly so the other person feels forced to comply privately. But here's the thing Meghan didn't anticipate. Those seeds reached Serena before they sprouted. Because people who truly respect Serena always give her a heads up. And when Serena heard that Meghan was dropping her name into conversations, hinting at projects, positioning them as a united front, something inside Serena went cold. Because this wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. But Meghan didn't stop. She began reaching out to media contacts, low-key, friendly, off-the-record conversations where she casually mentioned her admiration for Serena, how she'd love to collaborate in the future, how they were in talks. She framed it as excitement. But the intent was unmistakable. She wanted headlines. Not overt ones. Soft ones. Speculative ones. Headlines that would subtly reattach her image to Serena's. Headlines that would make Serena look involved even without her consent. And think about this for a moment. Imagine waking up to the world thinking you're partnering with someone you're actively distancing yourself from. Imagine watching your name get used to boost a narrative you didn't agree to. Imagine feeling your brand get entangled with someone else's strategy and knowing you never said yes. Would you feel manipulated? Misrepresented? Trapped? That's exactly what Serena felt. But the biggest piece of Meghan's plan? The part that shocked Serena the most? Meghan tried to position Serena into a central role in a major public moment Meghan was planning. A moment meant to portray unity, sisterhood, empowerment, buzzwords Meghan loves to use, but often weaponizes for strategic purposes. She wanted Serena to appear with her, to stand beside her, to send a message of solidarity. Not because the friendship was strong, but because Serena's presence would validate Meghan, give her legitimacy, boost her optics. Meghan wasn't asking for emotional support. She was asking for a reputational shield. And the way Meghan framed it? Insiders say it was chilling. Because Meghan spoke about Serena as if the decision had already been made. As if the appearance was guaranteed. As if Serena had no choice. Meghan was telling people Serena was on board before Serena even knew the plan existed. That was the moment Serena realized something very, very important. Meghan wasn't trying to fix their friendship. She was trying to use it. But here's where Serena's character truly shines. She didn't lash out. She didn't embarrass Meghan. She didn't expose the behavior. Instead, she reached out to one trusted contact, someone who had been approached by Meghan, and simply said, "I'm not involved in anything she's planning. Please don't include my name in this." No drama, no gossip, just clarity. And for most people, that would have been enough to end the situation. But not for Meghan. Because when she found out Serena had privately shut down the narrative she'd been creating, Meghan panicked. Insiders say Meghan felt blindsided. She reportedly said Serena was making things harder, that Serena didn't understand what was at stake, that Serena was pulling away at the worst possible moment, echoing the same emotional manipulation she used on the phone. And here's the emotional twist. Meghan still didn't seem to realize she was the problem. She believed Serena's boundary was unfair. She believed Serena's distance was abandonment. She believed she deserved Serena's support because of their history. Meghan wasn't seeing Serena as a person. She was seeing her as a solution. And when Serena learned that Meghan was upset, not because of the friendship, but because the plan wasn't working, that's when Serena's perspective shifted for good. She wasn't just dealing with neediness. She wasn't just dealing with entitlement. She was dealing with control. At this point, Serena fully understood. Meghan didn't want friendship. She wanted alignment. She wanted influence. She wanted to attach herself to Serena's credibility. And she was willing to bend narratives behind the scenes to make it happen. But here's where the danger creeps in, because the next move Meghan made didn't just cross a boundary. It crossed an ethical line. Because Meghan's plan escalated even further. She began contacting someone she absolutely should not have. Someone who had nothing to do with the situation. Someone Serena cares deeply about. Someone Meghan tried to use to pressure Serena indirectly. And that attempt? It horrified Serena. We're about to get into that moment. The moment Meghan crossed from manipulative into something else entirely. The moment Serena realized the situation wasn't just uncomfortable. It was unsafe. And that moment is what pushed Serena to take her first major step away, not quietly, but definitively. But what Meghan did next? That would be the moment that changed everything. What if the moment that exposes someone doesn't happen in private, but in a room full of flashing cameras, whispered conversations, and carefully curated smiles? What if everything someone tries to hide, every manipulative pattern, every calculated move, every strategic smile, suddenly becomes visible under the bright, unforgiving lights of a high-profile event? Because that's exactly what happened next. And for Serena Williams, this was the moment that didn't just confirm her suspicions. It crystallized them. It was the moment that made her see Meghan Markle with frightening clarity. The moment that peeled back every layer of charm and revealed the sharp, deeply self-serving behavior underneath. And the irony? Meghan thought this event would pull them closer. Instead, it exposed everything. Let's set the stage. This wasn't a public event Serena had planned to attend with Meghan. In fact, Serena wasn't supposed to be tied to Meghan at all that night. She attended for her own reasons, professional, philanthropic, personal. But Meghan was there too. And not by coincidence. She had orchestrated her presence. She had calculated it. She had positioned herself to create a moment. A moment where she and Serena would be seen together. A moment that could be photographed, published, circulated, interpreted. A moment that would attach her to Serena publicly and make it harder for Serena to continue distancing herself privately. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed that someone was waiting for you? Not in a warm, excited way, but in a demanding, expectant, almost entitled way? That's how it felt for Serena. Because when she arrived, she noticed Meghan before Meghan noticed her. Meghan wasn't mingling or enjoying herself. She was scanning the room, searching, waiting. And the moment her eyes landed on Serena, something shifted. Her posture straightened. Her smile sharpened. She moved with purpose. Serena felt it instantly. The air changed around Meghan. The intensity, the anticipation, the forcefulness of someone who wants something and believes they're about to get it. Meghan approached quickly. Too quickly. No hesitation. No warmth. Just immediate, energetic, strategic enthusiasm. And the energy was off. Serena felt it in her gut. Something wasn't right. Meghan greeted her with exaggerated excitement. Loud enough for people nearby to notice, warm enough to appear affectionate, but scripted enough that Serena instantly sensed the intention. This wasn't a friend saying hello. This was a performance. And Serena, who has spent her entire life around people trying to perform in her presence, recognized the act immediately. The moment was uncomfortable, but manageable, until the cameras turned. Because here's the part that stunned Serena. Meghan subtly positioned her body so the photographers had a perfect line of sight. She angled herself, timed her gestures, and presented Serena like a prop in her tableau. A human accessory. In that split-second choreography, Serena understood everything. Meghan wasn't trying to reconnect emotionally. She was trying to create the appearance of closeness. She was trying to capture an image, a single, well-framed photo, that would say to the world, "See? Serena and I are fine. We're still connected. We're still aligned." And Serena? She didn't play along. She stepped slightly to the side. Not rudely, but firmly. She shifted her stance just enough to block the staged moment. And Meghan noticed. Her smile tightened. Her eyes sharpened. She tried again. Another gesture, another movement meant to funnel Serena into place. But Serena held her ground. Polite, calm, unmoving. And that's when it happened. The moment that exposed everything. Meghan's face dropped. Not fully. Not dramatically, but in a micro-expression, a flash of irritation, frustration, and something darker. A flicker of the mask slipping. A moment so brief that most people would have missed it, but Serena didn't. Because she has seen opponents crack under pressure. She has seen facades break in milliseconds. She knows how to read emotional fractures. And in that micro-expression, she saw the truth. Meghan wasn't hurt. She wasn't confused. She wasn't disappointed. She was angry. Angry that Serena wasn't cooperating. Angry that Serena wasn't playing along with the optics. Angry that her plan wasn't working the way she'd envisioned. But Meghan wasn't done. She leaned in close, too close, and whispered something. Something sharp. Something passive-aggressive. Something that told Serena she wasn't dealing with a friend anymore. The words weren't needed to understand the intent. The tone said it all. The entitlement. The expectation. The subtext that Serena owed her something. Serena felt her entire body harden. Not in anger. In clarity. But then the moment escalated further, and this is where the event became the turning point. Meghan, realizing her attempts weren't working, switched to a new tactic. She pulled someone into the moment. A high-profile figure. Someone Serena respects deeply. Someone Meghan should never have involved. Meghan loudly introduced Serena to this person as if they were arriving together, as if they were still close, as if Serena had shown up to support her. She dragged Serena into her narrative in front of a witness. And the way she said Serena's name, calculated, performative, almost territorial, made Serena feel something she rarely feels, violation. Because Meghan wasn't just using Serena's presence. She was using Serena's relationships, her connections, her reputation, her credibility. And that crossed a line deeper than Meghan realized. The person Meghan pulled and looked confused, awkward. Serena felt suddenly responsible for a scenario she never agreed to. She felt hijacked. She felt used. And then came the twist, because Meghan wasn't done building her optics. She attempted to pull Serena into a small cluster of photographers nearby, gesturing as if they should walk together. A staged moment. A PR tableau. A visual symbol of unity that Meghan desperately needed. But Serena did not want to give. Serena stepped back, this time visibly, firmly, and the photographers noticed. They saw the hesitation. They saw the discomfort. They saw two women who were not aligned. And Meghan panicked, because that was the first time her plan visibly cracked. She forced a smile, tried to salvage the moment, tried to act like everything was natural. But everything in Serena's demeanor told a different story. Calm, detached, unmoved. And then something happened that no one expected. The respected figure Meghan had pulled into the moment leaned slightly towards Serena, subtle, quiet, and asked, "Are you all right?" It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It wasn't dramatic. It was soft. But it was enough to confirm Meghan's worst fear. Someone had seen through the performance. And Serena responded with a simple nod. But her eyes said everything. Because in that moment, she wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't emotionally reactive. She was done. This was the proof she needed. The moment that connected every red flag. The event that exposed Meghan's behavior beyond private manipulation. It was strategic. It was public. It was self-serving. And it was dangerous. Dangerous because if Serena had played along, even accidentally, she would have been complicit in something she deeply disagreed with. Something that misrepresented her. Something that used her. So when the event ended, Serena didn't say goodbye to Meghan. She didn't offer a smile. She didn't offer a hug. She walked out. Quietly. Decisively. And that silence? It wasn't just a boundary this time. It was a warning. But Meghan didn't take it as one. Because what she did after this event, what she attempted next, was the moment that forced Serena to confront a truth she'd been avoiding. And it's the moment that made her realize. Meghan wasn't just manipulating situations. She was manipulating people. And the next person she targeted was someone Serena would protect with her life. What happens when a manipulator realizes their usual tactics are no longer working? What do they do when the person they've relied on, emotionally, strategically, publicly, finally draws a hard line? They escalate. They push harder. They change tactics. They become unpredictable. And that is exactly what Meghan Markle did the moment she sensed Serena Williams shifting from quiet discomfort to clear rejection. Because after that event, the moment that exposed everything, Meghan didn't retreat. She didn't self-reflect. She didn't apologize. Instead, she pivoted into a mode that insiders describe as urgent, relentless, and emotionally charged. If the previous chapters revealed manipulation brewing beneath the surface, this chapter reveals what happens when that manipulation becomes blatant. Remember where we left off. Serena leaving the event early, deliberately, silently, with the unmistakable body language of someone who had reached her limit. That walkout wasn't subtle. It wasn't ambiguous. It was a message, and Meghan felt it. She felt the shift. She felt the distance harden into something solid. And in her mind, Serena's stepping away wasn't Serena protecting herself. It was Serena betraying her. Let me ask you directly. Have you ever dealt with someone who interprets your boundaries as rejection? Someone who sees your emotional needs as an inconvenience? Someone who twists your desire for space into a personal attack? Because when those types of people sense they're losing control, they don't soften. They tighten their grip. And that's exactly what Meghan did. The morning after the event, Serena received a long message from Meghan. Too long, too emotional, too dramatic. The kind that starts with concern, moves into hurt, then spirals into guilt. A message that didn't ask how Serena felt, but demanded explanations. A message full of phrases like, "I don't understand why you're distancing yourself. I needed you last night." And, "I felt so alone when I saw you avoiding me." It was emotional pressure disguised as vulnerability. Meghan framed herself as the injured party, the abandoned friend, the misunderstood victim. But here's what Meghan didn't expect. Serena didn't respond. Not out of malice, not out of pettiness, but out of clarity. Serena had finally seen Meghan's intentions with painful precision. The previous night had exposed Meghan's tactics in a way no private conversation could. And Serena knew that any response, any explanation, any reassurance would open the door again. So she stayed quiet, purposefully, protectively. Her silence was not rejection. It was survival. And silence is something Meghan cannot tolerate. By mid-afternoon, Meghan tried calling. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time with increasing urgency. Each time Serena chose not to answer. Because this wasn't a situation that required communication. This was a situation that required distance, boundaries, space. And when Meghan realized Serena wasn't going to pick up, everything escalated. Insiders say Meghan began reaching out to people close to Serena. Not to check if Serena was okay. Not to understand the situation. But to build a narrative. To gain sympathy. To portray herself as the one being hurt. She told one contact that Serena was pulling away for no reason. She told another that she was worried Serena had been influenced by the wrong people. She told yet another that Serena didn't understand her pressure. It was a familiar tactic, preemptively framing the story so that if Serena later spoke out, Meghan could say, "See, I tried. I cared." She didn't. But the most shocking part? Meghan didn't just reach out to Serena's professional contacts or mutual acquaintances. She reached out to someone she absolutely should not have involved. Someone deeply important to Serena. Someone outside the chaos. Someone Serena would do anything to protect. Serena's family. More specifically, someone extremely close to her inner circle. Someone who has no ties to Meghan's world, no interest in celebrity theatrics, and no desire to be pulled into anyone's drama. Meghan sent that person a message framed as concern for Serena's well-being, but the subtext was transparent. It was a plea. An attempt to use Serena's loved ones to pressure Serena into responding. A way to make Serena feel guilty. A way to wedge herself back into Serena's emotional space. And when Serena learned of this, the shift inside her wasn't subtle. It was seismic. Because there is one thing Serena will never tolerate. Not on the court, not in life, not ever. Someone involving her family without permission. Someone using the people she loves as emotional leverage. Someone crossing into the most sacred, protected part of her world. That was the moment Serena's silence hardened into something irreversible. She called the family member, clarified the situation, reassured them, and made one thing absolutely clear. Meghan had crossed a line. Not a small line. Not a misunderstanding. A line that changed the nature of the relationship completely. And ironically, while Serena was processing all of this with calm, Meghan was unraveling with urgency. She sent another long message, this one far more intense. The tone had shifted again. Gone was the emotional vulnerability. In its place was hurt, accusation, and bewilderment. I don't know what I did wrong. I feel like you're abandoning me. I thought you were different. Everyone else leaves when things get hard. It was the same cycle Serena had seen before. Guilt, pressure, emotional hooks, but now amplified. Accelerated. Desperate. Serena didn't answer. Because answering meant re-entering a dynamic she now fully understood. And Meghan? She wasn't done. Reports say she tried a new tactic, a tactic Serena recognized instantly as manipulation. Meghan sent Serena a voice note, soft-voiced, trembling, expressing how isolated and misunderstood she felt. But the tone was off, controlled, almost measured. The kind of emotional display that isn't spontaneous, but rehearsed. Serena listened. Once. That was enough. Because in the same message where Meghan expressed vulnerability, she also slipped in pressure. I need you. How could you pull away now? You know what I'm dealing with. You were supposed to be my safe person. Safe person. That phrase hit Serena hard. Not in a sentimental way, but in a deeply unsettling way. Because it framed Serena as responsible for Meghan's emotional landscape. It suggested that Serena had an obligation to stay connected. It was a form of emotional ownership. And Serena was not going to be owned. But here is where things took an even darker turn. Because when Serena did not respond to that voice note, Meghan escalated again. She reached out to someone in Serena's professional world. Someone who had nothing to do with the friendship. Someone whose only involvement was Serena's career. And Meghan's message to that person wasn't friendly or emotional. It was strategic, subtle. A quiet attempt to imply that Serena was going through something and needed support. A way to plant seeds of confusion. A way to make Serena look unstable. A way to create concern around Serena's silence. It wasn't just manipulative. It was reputation-threatening. Because if word spread that Serena was struggling, that could impact endorsements, partnerships, public perception. It could create narratives Serena did not authorize. And Meghan, whether intentionally or recklessly, was playing with fire. That was the moment Serena understood the danger fully. Not the emotional danger, the reputational one. Meghan wasn't just disregarding boundaries. She was disregarding consequences. And once someone shows you they are willing to involve your family, your inner circle, your professional network, all to get a response, all to pull you back into their chaos, you stop seeing them as a friend. You start seeing them as a threat. And Serena did. But the worst part? Meghan wasn't finished escalating. Because what she did next wasn't emotional. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't desperation. It was strategy. A strategy that attempted to force Serena to respond publicly. And that move? It would push Serena straight into the next chapter. The moment she discovered what Meghan was saying about her behind her back. Have you ever had someone ask you for something that made the room feel colder? Something so unexpected, so bold, so out of line that you needed a moment to process whether they were serious or whether you'd misheard them completely. That's the kind of moment Serena Williams found herself in when Meghan Markle made the request that would later become one of the biggest turning points in their friendship. A moment that hit Serena like a slap she never saw coming. Because this wasn't just a casual ask. It wasn't a favor between friends. It wasn't even an emotional appeal. This was calculated, strategic, and, according to insiders close to Serena, it was so wildly inappropriate that Serena didn't know whether to laugh, confront, or walk away. But let's rewind for context. The silence between Serena and Meghan didn't happen overnight. It was building slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. The tension wasn't verbal, it was atmospheric. It was in the tone of Meghan's calls, the urgency of her texts, the way she framed her situations. Meghan didn't ask for things in a normal way. She wrapped everything in emotional language. She dressed it in personal crisis. She presented it as if saying no would equal betrayal. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who never asks directly, but somehow makes you feel obligated anyway? That was the pattern forming. And Serena, despite her loyalty, despite her empathy, was starting to feel cornered. Then came the request. A private call from Meghan, delivered in a voice too sweet, too dramatic, too rehearsed for Serena to miss the undertone. Meghan started with softness, compliments, warmth, nostalgic references to their early friendship. Serena recognized the technique immediately. She's seen it in business negotiations, in brand meetings, in acquaintances who wanted something from her. Flattery before the blow. Softness before the ask. Emotional padding before manipulation. And as Meghan spoke, Serena braced herself. Because she could feel it coming. Something was off. Something was being prepared. And then Meghan said it. A request so heavy-handed, so self-serving, so astonishing that Serena reportedly froze. Here's the thing. I won't spell out the exact phrase in this chapter. You'll get the full detail later. But think about what someone would have to ask to make one of the most disciplined, emotionally grounded women on earth go silent. Imagine how deep the entitlement must have been. Imagine how personal it must have felt. Imagine the shock of realizing the friend sitting on the other end of the phone didn't see you as a human being with boundaries, but as a tool to be used. A resource. A shortcut. That's what Meghan asked for. Serena listened. Not interrupting. Not responding. Just listening. And what she heard made her pulse slow and her mind sharpen. Because she realized, in that moment, that Meghan didn't understand her. Didn't respect her. Didn't see her. Meghan saw the Serena Williams brand. The Serena Williams influence. The Serena Williams spotlight. And she wanted to borrow it. Control it. Attach herself to it. Shift her own narrative through it. Let me ask you something directly. Have you ever had a friend who didn't want your advice, just your name? Someone who didn't care about you, just about what being associated with you could do for them? Someone who praised you publicly but drained you privately? Because that's exactly how this moment hit Serena. And the craziest part? Meghan didn't seem to think the request was inappropriate at all. She delivered it with confidence, ease, expectation, as if Serena's agreement was a given, as if Serena's boundaries didn't exist, as if Serena's career and legacy were items she could check out like library books. There was something in Meghan's tone, something presumptuous, that made Serena realize this wasn't a one-time ask. If she said yes now, the door would never close. The requests would escalate. The emotional pressure would deepen. The relationship would collapse into a pattern of taking. And Serena? She wasn't about to become anyone's stepping stone. But here's where the emotional nuance comes in. Serena wasn't angry. Not yet. She wasn't offended. Not yet. She was disappointed. And if you've ever disappointed someone who rarely gets disappointed, you know that's far worse than making them angry. Because disappointment means expectations were broken. Trust was misjudged. Character was exposed.